Thank you both for being here. How many countries in Latin America recognize Guaido as the legitimate interim president?
Every country except, I think, Cuba, Argentina, Mexico.
I imagine Nicaragua.
Yeah, Nicaragua, sorry.
So let me ask you, we didn't just pull Guaido out of the air and say this is who we'll recognize. The basis of our support for Juan Guaido as the legitimate interim president, and the basis for why all these other countries have also recognized him, is because he is the democratically elected member of the National Assembly, who the democratically elected members of the National Assembly have made the president of that assembly. That, under the Venezuelan Constitution, fills the role of president when there is a vacancy in that office. Is that not the reason why we recognized him?
That's correct. We did not choose Juan Guaido. The Constitution of Venezuela chose Juan Guaido.
As interim president until the next free and fair election?
Yes.
Because I also heard a comment earlier by one of my colleagues, I believe Senator Paul, who's no longer here, but he said that our policy of replacing Maduro with Guaido, that is not the policy of the United States. The policy of the United States is to try to promote a transition to free and fair elections where the people of Venezuela choose who the next president of Venezuela is.
That's exactly right.
Let me ask you another thing you hear a lot about is he's still clinging to power. First of all, I think it's fair to say that we're not dealing, the Maduro regime is not really a government in the traditional sense of the word. It's an organized crime ring. Is that a fair characterization?
It is, and I think it's what distinguishes it from the many Latin American cases of military juntas which were replaced by democratic governments.
And as a criminal enterprise, basically what it's comprised of, these individuals that allow Maduro to remain, quote unquote, in power, much of the country, they don't really exercise much government writ any longer. They're heavily focused in Caracas, but to the extent that they are in control of national territory, the people that allow them to do it, the reason why they do it is not, it's fair to say most of them is not either ideological or personal affinity towards Mr. Maduro. It is actually the fact that these people have become very rich and want to maintain power that allows them to keep their money and their personal freedom. Would you not say that is the glue that holds together this criminal enterprise?
I would, Senator, and I think that explains part of the difficulty in getting them out.
And the reason why they won't leave is not because they love Maduro. Some of them want to replace him. The reason why they can't leave is because right now he's their best bet, at least for this moment. In essence, of all the options before them, this is the one that most guarantees them the power, for the time being, to protect their wealth and their freedom.
Senator,
personal freedom.
I think that's right, and I think again it explains the great difficulty of Venezuela.
Is it not also fair to say that one of the things that a lot of those folks in there are probably thinking about is, let's see what happens moving forward in American politics. Maybe there'll be a change in policy. To me, this is an issue that's been pretty strong bipartisan support. I think it's a bad assumption on their part, but there are some that are sort of standing around saying, well, let's wait and see, because maybe after the elections there'll be a change in policy that will take the pressure off of us.
That's our calculation, too, that Maduro is, to some extent, watching and waiting.
I think it's a bad bet. I don't think he has very many supporters here that are in favor of him remaining in power. The last point is pretty a straightforward question. You've answered it many different ways and times, but I wanted to reiterate once more. Whether it's the president or anybody else, when they discuss talking to Maduro, that means a negotiation with Maduro about how he leaves his current position and allows for there to be free and fair elections. We are not discussing talks. We are not open to talks about how he remains in power.
That's right. We are open to talks about his leaving power. Does he want to stay in Venezuela? Does he want to leave Venezuela? What happens to the sanctions? That sort of thing. For him and other people, those discussions we're willing to have. But a negotiation about his remaining in power in Venezuela, we are not going to have.
And my last question is, we see them buying all of this gasoline or whatever from the Iranians, one of the most oil-rich countries in the world, and no longer has any refining capacity. And that's been the case for a long time, way even before these sanctions took hold. How are they paying for it?
They're paying Iran with gold, as far as we are aware.
From both their reserves and from illegal mining.
Yeah, the gold reserves, the value seems to be rising because the price of gold is rising. But we are able to see sometimes the movement of gold out, which we think is to Iran, and they're trying to refill it in part through current gold mining in the Arco Minero.
So in essence, they are depleting their national gold reserves to buy time to provide even very limited amounts of fuel.
They are.
Thank you.